Everybody, Andrew Cuneo here with an Explorer Deck Tech. Today I'm going to be working on a mono green beatdown deck. If you watched my previous video where I was playing vampires, I lost in the last round of an Explorer event to a mono green deck to wind up only going 4-1, and my opponent's deck impressed me, so I decided to try to build my own version of it. I made a few different card choices than I think my opponent did, but I'm going to go over all of them for you. This is an archetype that I tried playing in Historic a bunch, several iterations of the format ago, and I liked it. It's a deck that can get really powerful draws, and in Historic at least, you kind of got overpowered by some of the more busted cards that were added to Historic that aren't a part of Explorer, which is why I want to go back to this. And also there's just been, I think, a pretty good assortment of new cards printed that can help out the mono green beatdown deck since the last time people may have tried it. So let's just go across the mana curve. Starting at the 1-drop slot, Llanowar Elves is obviously the best thing you can do on turn 1 in a green beatdown deck. It's really a reason to play a deck like this. And then Pelt Collector also gives you some excellent starts, so those are, I think, pretty clearly the two best 1-drops. I also have Lovestruck Beast, which I'll talk about more when I get to the 3-drops, but that's another thing you can do on turn 1, which is pretty nice, having 12 reasonable 1-mana plays. The 2-drop slot, I think, was also pretty easy. I've got 3 Scavenging Oozes, 4 Werewolf Pack Leaders, and 1 Voracious Hydra. I think Werewolf Pack Leaders are pretty easy 4 of, and then between Scavenging Ooze and Voracious Hydra, I think they're both quite good. It might be that you need to have 4 Scavenging Oozes in your deck. It's not the greatest 2-drop to play on turn 2, which is why I'm a little bit hesitant to have 4. Obviously, Voracious Hydra is also not a great 2-drop to play on turn 2, but Voracious Hydra is a very powerful thing if you get to the point where you've got a bunch of lands in play. One card I considered is Outland Liberator, just to get a little bit of artifact/enchantment removal in the deck. I've never really been a huge fan of that card, so I just didn't play with it. The 3-drop slot is where it gets interesting. There's, I think, some pretty viable options. So Old Growth Troll is probably the best of them. I think you should start with 4 copies of that. This card is just really strong. Then you have a choice kind of between Lovestruck Beast and Steel Leaf Champion. I went with 4 Lovestruck Beasts because I wanted to have the additional 1-mana plays. And then 1 Steel Leaf Champion and 1 Rhonas to kind of just round out the number of 3-drops that I have in my deck. There's also Yorvo, which you could try. I think Yorvo's worse than Steel Leaf Champion, so I would not start playing Yorvos until you'd maxed out Steel Leaf Champions. You also might want more copies of Rhonas. Depending on what sort of decks you're expecting to play against, Rhonas can be extremely good. If you're playing against a lot of decks that don't have that much removal and there's just a lot of creature combat happening, Rhonas is incredible. So that's an interesting slot on the curve. Then what you do at 4 mana is also very interesting. So one card that I think people would be pretty inclined to try is Collected Company. I've never been that wild about Collected Company in just non-combo decks in general, but especially in these mono green decks, because what you're basically doing is you're putting a card in your deck that what you're hoping happens is you company and you hit 2 of your 3-drops, or you hit Werewolf Pack Leader and a 3-drop. So you're basically saying, this is a card that I'm trying to just put more giant creatures into play, which that's already what your deck is doing. So it kind of just makes your deck more one-dimensional if you play this as opposed to some of the other cards I'm playing. Now, it does have it's not exactly one-dimensional because it does allow you to play at instant speed. That's pretty appealing, but all you're going to get is just another big creature. You're not getting any utility out of Collected Company in these mono green decks, at least in the main deck. I mean, I guess you're getting a little bit from Scavenging Ooze, and you could have, Reclamation Sage type cards in your sideboard to get some utility, but I just don't, I don't like having the deck be that one-dimensional. I don't think you need to make it that one-dimensional. So instead, I've got a different 4-mana card that is also incredibly powerful. So if you've never played with this Planeswalker before, for 4 mana, you get something that it gives you an ability to have a removal effect. The +1 ability where you're putting counters on things and giving them trample until end of turn gives you really strong attacks if you had any creatures in play when you cast it. And then also the -5. I've got a couple creatures in the sideboard. You get a certain amount of diversity from that ability as well. So that's pretty strong. 1 Questing Beast. I think this is just a great card on rate. There's also Uvenwald Oddity, but I think that all of the extra text on the Questing Beast adds up to a better card. You could honestly play more 4 mana cards if you wanted to. I thought that 4 was enough. And then 2 copies of the Great Henge. This is another thing that it would be, it's competing with Collected Company to make the deck. And I kind of prefer having Great Henge because it gives you this kind of overwhelming advantage if you get into a long grindy game. That Collected Company is a good card in those games, but the Great Henge is going to be a game-winning card. So this deck, it's perhaps a little bit less explosive because you don't have Collected Company, but it's going to give you more avenues to win the game. I skipped over them when I was going through the deck. So the other thing you get in green is you get some amount of creature fight removal spells. I'm a really big fan of Primal Might. You could try playing the snow one, Blizzard Brawl, and just playing all snow lands. I think you can get more value from your lands by not playing snow lands. Also, Primal Might scales as you get more mana. It's worse if you only have 1 or 2 mana. But if you get in a spot where you've got a trample creature and you can sink 6 mana into this, you're going to win the game with it. And then there's also this new addition from Streets of New Capenna, Bouncer's Beatdown. Now, this card is really interesting to me because I was looking for what's a good way to interact with Greasefang in this format from the mono-green standpoint. So this, if you have a 3 power or greater creature in play, you can kill Greasefang at instant speed for 1 mana, which I think is a huge deal. And even if you're not targeting a black permanent, it's 3 mana. That's not that bad of a deal. One card that a lot of people played in Standard, and I think my opponent had when I encountered this deck before, is Ram Through. Now, Ram Through only costs 2 mana ever, so that's an advantage. But I think that black is one of the colors that you really want this effect against. So you are going to, sometimes you're going to pay 1, sometimes you're going to play 3. I think that you are going to pay 1 a meaningful amount of the time, though. So this is not just strictly more expensive. But it also has a couple other advantages. You can hit Planeswalkers with it. You can't do that with Ram Through. Also, it's way harder to fizzle this card with instant speed removal from your opponent because you don't target your own creature. You only target your opponent's creature. If you have multiple creatures in play that are big enough, it's just going to work. Whereas Ram Through, there's a really high risk that if you play it and your opponent has an instant, they're going to make it so your card is just wasted. You also don't get the benefit of the kind of the trample spillover damage from Ram Through, which that's a useful part of the card. It's certainly not the most important part of the card. So I'm pretty excited to be trying Bouncer's Beatdown here. Looking at the sideboard, and remember, we do want to have some amount of targets to go get with Vivien Arkbow. So there's a Titan of Industry and a Kogla to go get. Those are 2 really high impact creatures. Also, Rec Sage, Elder Gargaroth, Toski, Shifting Ceratops. When you sideboard with this deck, I would say that you're not always going to just leave all of these targets in the sideboard, so you always have this kind of toolbox to go get with Vivien. You should just board in your good cards for the most part. Don't worry so much about having the perfect target in your sideboard for Vivien. You want to have at least a impactful creature you can get, so as you're sideboarding, you're probably never going to want to board in every 4, 5, and 6 mana creature in the sideboard into your main deck, so you're just not going to have to worry about that. 3rd copy of the Great Henge, which, like I said, I really like in those grindy matchups. And here, I do have a couple Collected Companies in my sideboard. This is specifically for playing against people that have a lot of sorcery speed sweepers, where you want to be able to put creatures into play at instant speed. I think it's nice to have the option to have this card. They got spread out, but 2 more Bouncers Beatdowns and 2 Soul Guide Lanterns. This is my plan against the Greasefang deck, is to go up to 4 Bouncers Beatdowns and have some Soul Guide Lanterns. I haven't gotten to try that matchup yet, but that's how I'm planning to attack it. Then 2 copies of Run Afoul. I have played against a lot of kind of like flying tribal decks in Explorer so far. Also, you might play against somebody who puts like Dream Trawler, Goldspan Dragon into play, something like that. And obviously, Run Afoul is going to be a great answer there. I guess I skipped over the lands too. So in the land slot, you have a couple of options. There are a few things you could play that are colorless lands. I think it's a bad idea to put colorless lands in your deck when you have so many double and triple green cards, and you want to have green mana on turn 1, obviously, in this deck as well. You wouldn't be able to ever keep a hand that didn't have green mana in it. So maybe it doesn't matter for the 1-drops. But none of the colorless lands are so good that I think you want them to ever mess up your ability to cast Old Growth Troll. So only the colored lands is where I was focusing on. Now, there's Castle Garenbrig, which I don't think this deck gets enough value out of, and I'm playing a lot of lands that aren't forests. It's kind of a disaster if your Castle Garenbrig ever has to come into play tapped, because you really don't get that much from it, even when it's working for you. If you wanted to play 1, sure. I mean, it helps you with Voracious Hydra. It helps you cast some of the more expensive creatures in the sideboard, but really it just doesn't do that much for you. I've got 4 Hashep Oasises, which is certainly not a particularly powerful card, but it's pretty free. You're going to take a little bit of loss of life from it, but I think in most matchups it's not going to matter that much, and being able to give something +3/+3 at sorcery speed's not that great, but you do have a lot of tramplers and creatures that are generally hard to block, so it does make it so that you're going to get the damage from the Hashep Oasis. A lot of the time, it's just going to be sack a land to deal 3 damage to your opponent. Also, if you're looking to make your Werewolf Pack Leader up to 6 power to draw a card, it's 3/3, you get to 6 that way. And then finally, 2 Boseijus. I think that it's probably fine to be playing 2. You could play only 1 if you wanted. Certainly, you definitely want to play at least the first one. I also don't have any Kazandu Mammoths in my deck right now. I thought that I just didn't want a land that would come into play tapped. You could play a few of those if you wanted to, for sure. I think if you built the deck slightly differently, like you really wanted to play Company, and you weren't going to play Lovestruck Beasts, instead you were just going to max out on Steel Leaf Champions, so you're going to have fewer 1-mana plays, I think then you're going to be wanting to start adding Kazandu Mammoths into your deck. But like I said, I wanted to be able to cast something on turn 1, so I went with the max number of Lovestruck Beasts instead, and like I said, I don't have Company in my deck. So that's how I've constructed this deck. Let's run it through an event and see how it performs. Alright, we got 1-drop into, sadly, a 2-drop, not a 3-drop, but other than that, very strong hand. I'm never going to be sad to play Llanowar Elves on turn 1. Which is a blue deck. A blue-black deck. Could this be a rogues deck, maybe? Some sort of Foretell themed deck. This comes into play tapped, so I can't play Vivien this turn, which is very sad for me. Instead, I'll be forced to tap with Llanowar Elves and draw a card. What could the Foretell card be? I guess it could be Behold the Multiverse. Well, that is not a very competitive card to put into your deck. Hopefully they don't have a sweeper. I guess I could actually lose if they have a sweeper, which would be kind of sad. They have Skull Raid. You got it. Doesn't really matter. So, blue-black cards my opponent owns. I'm not gonna go too crazy thinking about this. Let's just do that, I guess. This is the kind of hand where I like Lovestruck Beast. I think in an aggressive deck like this, you really want to do something on turn 1. Again, 1/1 isn't the best thing in the world to do, but it is certainly something. Obviously, my opponent's deck is not a very competitive deck. I wonder if this is a good enough 1-drop to just play in an aggressive black deck in this format. Probably doesn't hit quite hard enough. You can play a very large number of 2/1s for 1, I'm sure, if you wanted to. And they're probably not particularly good cards. This seems like it's probably a little bit worse than a 2/1 for 1. But I like to attack with my pack leader. Probably not. They double block with the Callous Blood Mage. I think that's a pretty easy block for them to make, and I don't feel like I'm getting very much value from my pack leader that way. Certainly I would like to at least draw a card off of it. It's gonna die. Another Fang Disciple. If I draw my 4th land, I'm going to play Great Henge, not Questing Beast. You failed, Werewolf Pack Leader. You're a failure. You flunked. If they attack with the Road Cap, then I'll just double block. I'll lose my 1/1. There is something that comes up when you play a deck like this with Pelt Collector, which sometimes you want your Pelt Collector to be enabling the Lovestruck Beast. And so you might want to sequence differently so it doesn't get a counter. Given that I drew a land there, though, and I'm going to be getting the Great Henge into play, it's likely that this Lovestruck Beast is really not going to be very good at attacking, because I can no longer put 1/1s into play with Pelt Collector or Llanowar Elves. The only way that this Lovestruck Beast will be able to attack that's left in my deck is if I draw a second copy of Lovestruck Beast and make the 1/1 token, because the 1/1 token does not get a counter from the Great Henge. But obviously, I'm going to win this game very easily off the back of the Great Henge. My opponent's playing a blue-black deck that is not filled with particularly good cards. The Akiba Reckoner Raid dodges the Scavenging Ooze's ability to get a counter. I'm not going to think this too hard. I just need to make my creature big and attack my opponent. We'll get to the end of this game and hopefully get a more competitive match.
I've survived an apocalypse. I will survive you. We're fit enough to survive.
It's looking grim for you, opponent. It's looking very grim. Oh no, my Llanowar Elves failed. You're a failure, Llanowar Elves. Alright, I get to cast my Bouncer's Beatdown at least. Bang. Beatdown on that Null Priest of Oblivion. Another one. I don't know what I'm hoping to hit here. I guess these are good ones.
Stomping time.
It's nice having this many trample animations going on at once. I don't think my opponent can even block in a way where they would live. I don't think I need the beatdown, or I can also grow the ooze. They have effectively 14 life, and I've got way more than 14 power. Round 2. Alright. No second land, but I do have a Llanowar Elves, and I've got 2 more things I can do for 1 mana. If I draw a land off the top of my deck, this hand gets really good really quick. And it's playing Gigantha, so they might be playing some sort of a food deck. Mayhem Devil Food. Beginning to look more and more like a food deck. No, I needed that. I needed that Llanowar Elves opponent. Yeah, it's just food. It was food all along. Alright. Land showed up at least. They also didn't have a goose. Actually, probably their hand actually isn't even that strong if that was their play on turn 3. They're probably a Meat Hook Massacre deck, which is a little bit unfortunate for me. No second fatal push, please. Interesting.
My grief fuels my mission.
So they do have red mana in their deck. Presumably for Mayhem Devil. I don't know that this Karn is... I just don't think this is a good card in general, so... It's going to be a hard pass for me on that one. I'm going to just gamble that they don't have another Fatal Push. It would be the third copy, and they also probably would have been tempted just to push the pack leader, so I didn't draw a card. Anyway. They're drooling all over my pack leader. Look at that thing's tongue just hanging over the edge there. So I play the Steel Leaf Champion. I deal an extra damage this turn. That doesn't seem particularly useful. I think I'm going to attack with the Old Growth Troll and the Pelt Collector and then play the Werewolf Pack Leader. That will enable me, if they have Meathook Massacre, to turn the Old Growth Troll into a creature at the end of their turn. Like if they massacre for 4, they would get up to 6, and then I'd have the Old Growth Troll to hit them back down to 2. I don't think it would have made sense to just do nothing on my turn, because they could conceivably, if they had a removal, if they went like removal spell, play something that's capable of crewing the Old Growth Troll, or that's crewing the Sky Sovereign, I could just block the Old Growth Troll. So I think that by playing this way, they need a sweeper. I don't think that they're very likely to be able to get out of this just by casting 2 spells. Certainly not if that's your first spell. They can use it to turn the Sky Sovereign into a big creature. I don't think that that's going to help them. Also, I can't imagine they have a card in their sideboard that helps them in this situation. So it's like a food deck, but they also have Karns in their deck. So cards I'm interested in board again. The Rec Sage. I think not the Titan of Industry. I mean, it wouldn't be the worst. Certainly not this. Maybe I'll board in the Kogla and leave the Titan of Industry in my sideboard. I think the Great Henge is probably good in this matchup. I don't think I want Soul Guide Lantern. I don't think I want Primal Might. I guess this can kill Mayhem Devil. I basically just want to have cards that can kill Mayhem Devil in my deck. Don't want the Scavenging Oozes. They're probably pretty good. Maybe try it like this. This might be a little bit too much of the Bouncer's Beatdown kind of stuff, but I really want to be able to kill Mayhem Devil. This can also kill their Karns, which that could matter, I guess. Strong hand. One problem with this hand is it is pretty weak to Meathook Massacre. I think I'm going to just march into, if they have a Meathook Massacre for 1, they're just going to get me. I'm going to play 3 1-mana cards next game. Or maybe not. Guess there's no need to walk into that now that I drew the Old Growth Troll. I don't have any forests in play, which is kind of annoying. I can also just cast the Lovestruck Beast just as a 5/5. Maybe that's the play. I think if one of these lands was a forest for the Old Growth Troll to attach to, it would have been a pretty easy play to just put the Old Growth Troll into play, but I'd be creating one where they could just kill it. Okay. Goose is going to get Death Touch. So this is interesting. If I play the Scavenging Ooze, I can eat the Cauldron Familiar, but they have a food. Also, if I play the Scavenging Ooze, this turns into a 2/2, and then if they have a way to kill the 1/1, it's bad for me. I think I'm just going to play this. If they have Fatal Push and they can push the human, I'll just only attack with the 2/2 and I'll be sad. I like that. I like that they just took it all. I can't Bouncer's Beatdown the Gilded Goose for only 1 mana. I could Bouncer's Beatdown a Mayhem Devil for 1 mana. Or I could Bouncer's Beatdown the Cauldron Familiar with 1 mana, which I don't know why I'd really want to do that, but it's a possibility. They got a Pithing Needle, which I guess they're going to name Scavenging Ooze. I was going to do this anyway, so let's do it now. They also don't even have enough mana to make a food. Their goose. It's not looking good for them, I would say. Especially because this questing beast is just going to maul the Karn free. So, jump, takes 7. I think I'm not going to attack with the 1/1. They could certainly just block it with the Gilded Goose. That'd be a free block for them. I guess they have to jump. Maybe I missed a point of damage. Although it's one of those cases where if they don't have a spell, I'm probably fine. As long as they don't have Meathook Massacre. Round 3 on the play. Very strong hand. Was Pelt Collector ever legal at the same time as Werewolf Pack Leader in Standard? I don't think it was. If it was, it wasn't for that long. Because these Pelt Collector into Werewolf Pack Leader starts are very good. It's one of the things I'm discovering from this deck. For 4 mana, this can just be a 4/5 trampler, which is going to be good against a mono red deck, I would guess. Really good defending Kakazan. Come on, nothing. No creature this turn. That is definitely a creature. 6/5 Annex. So I could attack with both. They'd block. Then I could fight. Post combat. With the Vivien. Because it's not actually fight, it's punch with the remaining pack leader. But they get 2 1/1s, so they would be able to kill. The Vivien. Or I could have powered up the Werewolf pack later to just trade. There are reasons I don't really understand. My opponent instead chose to just take it, which I don't think was a very good choice for them. Maybe they have Embercleave and they're just like, you're just gonna die. It doesn't matter. Oh, I forgot this was powering, that they powered down their Annex because these things flip. It's a funny interaction. If ever there was a turn when a person had Embercleave, this is it. Can I survive? I would take 12, 13, 17. Oh no, I took more than 12. I would take, is that 16 from this? So I think I'd just die if they have Embercleave. If I block here, they play the cleave. They go to 10 from the Embercleave. Block here. Six, 10. Yeah, I don't think I really have a good block. That was very sad for me. So what can I do about that? Reclamation Sage seems good, and not so much against Embercleave, but it hits Annex and it hits faces Kakazan. I think that Great Henge is probably pretty good. I think I probably want Titan of Industry. What don't I want, though, is the question. Maybe these Viviens aren't that good. I think Voracious Hydra is probably worse than Bouncer's Beatdown as well. Scavenging Ooze is probably pretty bad. I guess it's fine in small numbers. Actually, maybe I just don't want any Viviens. That sounds wrong. Let's try it like this. If I get to the point where I can cast these cards, they're going to be great. I think I might need to make a second play before turn 5, though. Put it on a mull to 5. Come on, Old Growth Troll off the top of my deck. Or Reclamation Sage, Lovestruck Beast. Any of those seems good. I hate Burning Tree. more than is right for a person to beat it. I guess Burning Tree Emissary is a card that some people might be tempted to put in a deck like the one I'm playing. I think it doesn't do enough. I think the 2/2 body is just too inconsequential for what my deck is trying to do. It makes more sense in my opponent's deck, where the opponent's really trying to get off to a fast start and put a lot of bodies in play to make a really cheap Embercleave. I'm really being robbed of all my Pelt Collectors. I'll force them to use the Fanatical Firebrand as well this turn. Boseiju's another card that's good against Embercleave. I have a decent amount of instant speed stuff that's good against Embercleave. They stole an old growth troll? It's gonna be all over your thieving ways. So I'm gonna take 7, go down to 5. I'll make it 3/3. Then I'll attack, and I think I'll gain life. Get back up to 8. And I have the Boseiju that covers me against the Embercleave, which they didn't draw, they just draw land. Ooh, I can use Castle Lockthorn now. It's not going to do enough though. So I would go block, block, gain 3 up to 11, take 6 down to 5. Actually, I also could just animate the Lair of the Hydra, so they wouldn't even deal 6. They just don't have an attack at all. Might have been able to just kill them. Didn't think about that. I just made a new 3/3. It doesn't matter. They died before they knew how dead they were. The Titan of Industry was coming for them. I think I might have too many Bouncers Beatdowns in my deck post-board. I put them all in because I wanted the instant speed interaction, but 3 mana is a lot. I do think that the only way I can realistically lose, I think, is to Embercleave or maybe Annex without a cleave. Is it the Robber? You know, another way I could lose is they could just steal all the good cards from my deck. Please don't have Strangle. I don't think they had Strangle. The other card they could have Goblin Chain Whirler. That would be devastating. Chandra. There's a lot of things that could go wrong because I didn't have my third land. That's not that bad. Things could have gone far worse than that. Come on, lands. Okay. They have Embercleave. That's not Embercleave. No. I lose. Well, that wasn't that much fun of a match. Round 4. Rematch against the red deck. Alright, I don't mind getting a rematch against the deck I just lost to. It's a good way to learn if there's a real problem in the construction of the deck, or did I just not draw great? Oh no, it's the Old Growth Troll. Lovestruck Beast is here to save me. I'm just going to block the Etchings of Kamano because it means that I won't lose my Lovestruck Beast to a Stomp. This does mean they get to just play the Old Growth Troll kind of for free. A Lightning Strike, interesting. I think if they attack me this turn, I'm just going to be a coward and not block at all. I really want to get the Great Henge into play. That isn't really that effective getting, because they need green mana to play this from the Adventure Zone now. Same thing with the Old Growth Troll. The Old Growth Troll has to have a forest to go into, and they don't have any forests in their deck, presumably. If they all of a sudden just have a Stomping Ground, they're really going to get me good. It'd be nice if they would stop hitting gigantic creatures off the top of my deck. Also, it'd be nice if they don't Embercleave me this turn. That's fine. That means that they don't get to cast either of their giant creatures that they stole from me. Should have got my Hashep Oasis. Mistake. Chandra Dressed to Kill. I've heard there's a decent amount of controversy as to whether these decks should be Embercleave based or Chandra based. I'm pretty sure my opponent right now is wishing that their deck was Embercleave based and not Chandra based. Still going to board in the Rec Sage because of the Kamana Faces Kakazans and Annex. I think I'm also going to have a third Bouncer's Beatdown. You can hit Chandra. Maybe that doesn't make any sense. Maybe I should just have Primal Might. Do you want another Great Henge? Do I want this thing? I think not. Certainly want the Questing Beast. I think maybe this will be the configuration this time, although I do have a lot of Scavenging Oozes, which I don't love that one in this matchup. Maybe I'll trim one of those and have another Titan. Try it like that. So I think this is roughly what I did against the other red deck, except I had both the Bouncers Beatdowns in my deck as well. Since I'm guessing that I think usually people don't play both Embercleave and Chandra in the same deck together. So I think they're probably not an Embercleave deck. Also, they had Lightning Strike in their deck, which is another indication they're probably not playing with Embercleave. Because normally in an Embercleave deck you would want to just have mostly creatures. This hand is potentially quite bad against Chain Whirler. I think I'm just... If my Llanowar Elves lives, I'm just going to play a 5/5 Lovestruck Beast again. I'm not going to play 3 1/1s. I don't think it would make any sense to do that. Rampaging Ferocious. Let's see if they're interested in blocking. Mono red decks pretty much never loved the little Lovestruck Beast experience. Wow, Kamana Faces Kakazan. I guess it dodges the... It doesn't dodge the Ferocidon for long. Eventually, the Ferocidon's gonna... This will leave play and come back, and then they would lose 1 life to the Ferocidon. So what do I want to do? I'll just make another 1/1 so that my Lovestruck Beasts can attack. And I'll make another Lovestruck Beast so my Pelt Collector can attack. And I'll attack. I think my opponent is flummoxed. They're not used to being on the back foot as the red deck. They're the one who's supposed to be attacking, and I've flipped the script. I think 4. There is a danger here that they can kill both of the 1/1s. They didn't even attempt to kill 1/1s. Never mind. Round 5. So far I have not activated Hashep Oasis in any games, but I haven't played very many competitive games. I've played a lot of games where it was lopsided in one direction or another. There's probably another mono red deck. So I think I'll just play the Lovestruck Beast defensively again. This time it's going to be a little bit harder to keep it as an attacking creature. Or is it? I think I'm going to attack with the Lovestruck Beast and just fight the Burning Tree Emissary. Then if they have a Chain Whirler, I'll just lose the Llanowar Elves. But I'll have a Pelt Collector to play the next turn, which will allow the Lovestruck Beast to continue to attack. I think it's worth keeping the Burning Tree Emissary, like killing the Burning Tree Emissary instead of being a 4/5. This keeps their devotion down, which is an issue if they have Anax. I can Boseiju the Anax, but I think I'd rather not have to do that. Make another Hashep Oasis and just play Scavenging Ooze. I'm going to hold this Pelt Collector because of Goblin Chain Whirler. Also, I want to make sure I have enough mana to use Boseiju, which I could play the Pelt Collector and use Boseiju still, but just the 1/1 Pelt Collector is not going to do anything, and I think I actively don't want it to grow. So I want my Lovestruck Beast to be an attacking creature. I'm probably just going to end of turn Boseiju the Anax. Boseiju's really quite strong against these mono red decks. I'm glad I have 2 copies. I wasn't sure about playing 2 copies when I constructed my deck, but it seemed like 2 copies is a good choice. They now have to block. And I think that I was not going to sack to the... I was not planning to sack a Hashep Oasis. I think I was just going to activate the Scavenging Ooze, but they conceded before I could decide. So I think I'm going to go for the third variation on sideboarding. This one might be an Embercleave deck. So I'm going to do that at least. Mate, do I want Questing Beast even? Maybe I want this. I'd have to do a Scryfall search to see if there's any... Are there any 1-mana green interactive cards? Like a 1-mana green that just gets an enchantment off the board? Wouldn't even have to destroy it. It could be, you know, one of those ones that puts it on top of their deck or on the bottom of their deck. The same thing with an artifact. I'm not sure if that card exists. This is not a friendly start. Especially if they have Stomp. I don't think we're coming back from this one. I'm not going to Boseiju the Etchings of Kamano. I can hit it with the Rec Sage. Also, they would not have played the Fervent Champion, I think, if they had another land. So they actually need the land. Maybe if I draw like an Old Growth Troll or a Lovestruck Beast off the top of my deck, I could get in this game. It's a pretty big deal because it makes it very likely I'll be able to play Great Henge, which I'm going to do, even though it means I'm not going to have access to Bouncer's Beatdown. I do have access to Boseiju at least. Okay. Just gonna gain life. I think I'm gonna pass. I think I don't need to Primal Might this Anax. I think I might be able to bait them into an attack. Torbran. Okay. So if I Bouncers beat down Torbran, I guess I should Boseiju this, then Bouncers beat down this, then just eat this. Sounds like a plan. Could also just Bouncers beat down the Burning Tree and eat this and then Primal Might that. Maybe that's even better. I guess if they had like a Flame Blast Bolt, this would have been bad. But they didn't have one. I like that. Back up Anax, but this time it's only a 2/3. So I could make this a 6 power, and then I could Hashep Oasis one of my creatures. That's probably a pretty good attack for me. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that one. That seemed like a pretty good deck. I went 2-1 against Mono Red, so that was my one loss, but I did beat it the 2 other times. Maybe it'd be nice to see if I could find like 1 or 2 more cheap instant speed interactive cards that could target Anax and or Embercleave. It also might have been nice just to have more Reclamation Sages in that matchup. But I think like a few tweaks of the sideboard, and that should probably be a pretty good match. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll catch you next time.